Kelly, what a week. What a week, Tom Lee. Look, everybody, this is the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast presented by Underdog Fantasy. This is the Fantasy Walkabout Season 2, Episode 8. And aside from a small daylight savings time situation, we got onto this show here relatively smooth. I forgot that we're in different parts of the world, Tom Lee. So it was 3 o'clock my time, and I'm sitting here worrying because I hadn't heard anything from you yet this morning. You promptly reminded me that, you're in Australia and I'm here.
Yeah, pretty much. The alarm went off at 6 a.m. and then I got a message straight away from you and went, oh, okay, yep, that's happened. That's world news. That's the sort of world news that has sort of been glossed over amidst the whole war issue going on in a different part of the world. So change the clocks back and we'll hit it fresh each week from now.
I hate daylight savings time. It's messed me up in more ways than one, but we recovered and we are here. We're ready to go. And there's no shortage of things to talk about. We have had so many fantastic guests on this show for the last 3 to 4 weeks, from Troy King to Steven Johnson, Austin Gayle, Pat Daugherty, Ben Gretch, Alfred Fernandez. Just no time to get really into what's been happening because we've been learning and going through processes nonstop. So it has been. We even had Shane is the worst on here for the Fantasy Walkabout, I think, last week. It was a very entertaining episode that you should go and check out. It's just been nonstop. So today we're going to do things a little bit differently, right? We're not going to really sit here and hammer down trade values and things like that. We'll do a little bit of it as we go. We're not going to just throw it out the window, but we're going to talk about some signings and some contracts and some trades. And I want to, out of the gate, I just want to make a point. We're not a political program. We are not really a social discourse program. That's not what we're here for. We understand that it's happening. I encourage you to go and read our counterparts from the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast, his article regarding the Deshawn Watson case and all that. He does a great job of hammering home the importance of understanding the language and what's happening. But obviously, it's fantasy football relevant, and that's what we're going to talk about here the most. So just know, if you're listening to this, if discussing that trade and the surrounding effects of that trade bothers you, we apologize. Just understand that this is a fantasy football show. So that's what we're going to focus on. So with that in mind, I also want to give a big shout out. I want to give big shout outs to the Dynasty Vipers for putting us on their YouTube network. They've been a great help helping us grow, and Matt Donnelly has been super supportive. So I want to give a shout out to them, and I want to give a huge shout out to Underdog Fantasy for giving us the chance to promote their brand through our brand and partnering up. So shout out to them. All that being said, Tom Lee, do you want to hear an insane few numbers? I'm just gonna read it out.
Hit me.
$1,763,432,500 has been spent so far on 148 players.
Life's good.
With contracts totaling 257 years in length total, right? $840,540,000 of that has been guaranteed on their contracts. I'm going to go on a limb here and say that is the most of all time.
It's like a lot, yeah.
That accounts for 47.66% of the total signings. Almost half is guaranteed. The NFL is definitely going that way. Guaranteed at signing, Tom Lee, $563,440,000, accounting for 31.95%. When they signed the dotted line,
they got paid.
Cash on demand. Insane. The insane number to me, though, and this is where NFL contract language, we're not contract specialists, right? Tom Lee, you don't claim to be we're not specialists in fucking anything, right? Except for shooting the shit, which is what we're going to do today. But the first year cap for all this money is only $236,649,245 for an average of $1,598,981. That does not feel like a lot. That's just how much bonus money is getting paid up front. And you see it with restructuring of contracts.
Yeah.
So just going through the list, you just go through the list of transactions. If you go to Sport Track, which is where I'm getting all this information, one of the best websites possible. If you just scroll through it, just like click the middle button on your mouse and just run it down, it's converted to roster bonus, converted to bonus, converted to bonus, converted to bonus, converted to bonus. It's all over the place.
Because I think we said this heading into free agency season, right? Everyone's worried about, this team's over the cap. How are they going to possibly sign anyone? They've got plenty of different levers to be pulling, right?
Yeah,
and signing at different times or cutting and restructuring, these teams have got it covered, right? Unless it is millions, like we're talking hundreds of millions above, and you are in proper strife. Yes, they're fully capable of pulling all these levers. So it's interesting just to look through and going, okay, what do these small little tweaks and roster changes mean, especially for the longevity of some of these guys? So you take older players who are restructuring their deals, they'll pull some money forward, and all of a sudden they're not guaranteed a lot in the next couple of years, and that then affects their dead cap number. Their likelihood of being on the same roster has changed, and that stuff then starts to matter to us. So the more we learn about it, the more we dig into it, I think the more relevant it starts to become in Dynasty especially. And it's just handy to know, here are some big numbers we're seeing. What does it actually mean for our players in particular, and what's the impact to us? How guaranteed are we and they in this aspect, and how confident can we be of how long they're going to be there for?
And you can see some of the contract signing is ego boosting. The Devontae Adams contract, there's like 2
we'll
years
get to that.
From what I saw, right? And the fallout thereafter. But a lot of that is just language to make him the highest paid receiver, which is what
absolutely. Yes.
And 2 of those contract years, not very likely that he actually sees the end of it, and that's very important. When one thing we talked about with Austin Gayle on Wednesday was the people needing to learn how to not freak out when initially seeing a contract. I asked him if Max Crosby's contract, I know he's the defensive end, and this is fantasy important information though. I had to ask it. I thought it was an overpay the minute I saw it. Then Austin kind of broke it down on how it'll work in the end, how the salary cap is going up and production will catch up to it. And then I was corrected by Ben Gretch on Christian Kirk's contract, where I said, maybe don't relax because they can get out of it, which we'll talk about. And he said, that's still too much for getting out of it. So we've had great conversations this week. And I want to also shout out Anand Nanduri, former salary cap employee for the NFL, who has been on fire all week. His Twitter account, you can see him at Nanduri NFL. Go follow him. He's a former salary cap employee for the NFL. If you want to ask questions, that's the guy you need to go and
that's
talk
what you want to be at.
100%. Look, we're going to take a quick second. It's great to get warmed up here. We're going to take a quick second. When we come back, we are going to talk about some moves that haven't been made yet, but that we think are going to get made. Like one each before we really get into the contract, fantasy.
A little speculation.
Good stuff. But there's one move that I specifically think is going to happen that hasn't happened yet, and I think it'll start the domino effect on running backs. So sit tight when we come back. We're getting into that. Here's a clip from our show with Pat Daugherty 2 weeks ago. We're going to have more clips. Lucas has been very busy at work. We're going to have more clips coming out from all these shows if you missed it. We also are putting together a highlight reel, so that's going to be super dope. So sit tight. Here's a clip from Pat Daugherty. Enjoy. At what point do you think you'd be willing to move the guys like Tyreek Hill and the Cooper Kupps and Devontae Adams for the Elijah Moores and the, darling young wide receivers? What does that take for you in your gap, just personally, when you're approaching Dynasty, especially in startups?
You talking to me?
I am.
Tommy. I was still, I'd be leaning on the old guard because, I've learned the hard way in Dynasty, projecting more 2-3 years in the future is just kind of it's just like whatever. It doesn't work out a lot, and I'd still just be more comfortable taking like even like 2 years of Devontae Adams over say like Elijah Moore's career. Even though I like love Elijah Moore, like I'd rather just bet on like the next 2 years of Devontae Adams than the like next 10 years of Elijah Moore. As much as I love Elijah Moore.
Pat Daugherty is one of the smartest human beings I've ever been able to have a conversation with. He is great. Go and check out that show everywhere you get the rest of your Full Tilt Fantasy podcasts. Tom Lee, is there a transaction that you're kind of waiting for to happen that you think is a lock to happen that hasn't yet?
I don't know if it's one transaction. For me, it's just eyes on quarterbacks, right? Because that's the fun stuff. It's completely changing for every other asset and skill position we have in fantasy. So waiting on the Matt Ryans, waiting on, we're going to get to him in a second, the Bakers, waiting on, Jimmy G, see where these guys end up. A lot of the time it seems like it's impossible they can go back to where they were because they're all offended somehow, apart from Matt Ryan, who I think understands what his role is now, which is overpaid,
the only one that's
overaged.
Offended is Baker.
Yeah, but even Jimmy G wanted out of, he wanted a change of situation. The young guys coming through. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, right. It's all speak. But yeah, for me, I want to see if
there quarterbacks that matter.
Yeah, the quarterbacks that matter. See if there's any movement there. The one that was speculated that I don't think will have any feet whatsoever was switching Hurts and Ryan with Philly. And that was just a favorite because I am a homer when it comes to Atlanta. I'd love to see a younger quarterback come in and, by all means, send Matt Ryan on to where they have more pieces to play with and see his production be good in fantasy one last time, possibly. But apart from that, no, it's just eyes on quarterbacks for me.
Matt Ryan was good in fantasy up until everyone on that team went bye-bye.
Yeah.
So Matt Ryan was very good last year. For like the first 6 weeks, you were really happy.
Yeah.
But after that, well, you can't blame him. You had Russell Gage, who we're going to talk about in a little bit here. Got the free agent boost, found the perfect spot. That's fair. Obviously, the quarterbacks are the most fun, right? We're gonna kick the show off with quarterbacks because they're obviously the most impactful. But for me, the move that I think isn't being talked about is Kareem Hunt leaving the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, Deshaun Watson coming in and getting paid an absolutely dumb amount of money. They've also brought in Jacoby Brissett, and I believe they brought in another quarterback. So Baker's definitely gonna, maybe not even definitely, be out the door. But I think Kareem Hunt's gonna end up being a cap casualty. I would think that they'd get rid of him. They are bringing Dearness Johnson back. They brought him back cheap, and they can probably trade Kareem Hunt and or let him go. Pretty easily. And I think for sure, if he does, and Tampa Bay has not re-signed or signed a running back, I know a lot of people want Breece Hall. Go to Tampa. Breece Hall, number 30, Tampa. Yeah, I don't think Brady wants a rookie running back. I think Arians hates a rookie running back more than anything. I wanted James White over in Tampa. James White re-signed 2 years in New England. So, ipso facto, if the Browns, and I tweeted this out, if the Browns do let go of Kareem Hunt for cap reasons, which I do think is still in the cards, then I think he quickly and very easily goes and signs in Tampa Bay. And if that happens, you're looking at a top 5 running back next season because he can catch, he can run. He's still very good. I know he's old, right? And he'll be a fantasy steal. So I suggest going and trading for Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson as much as possible. And I know, Zoltan, if you're watching or listening, I know you hit my mentions already in leagues trying to get Dearness Johnson from me. Very smart man, that guy. So shout out to you. That's a couple of moves that we're sitting here waiting for. Let's get into quarterbacks, Tom Lee.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the bulk of this.
Oh my God, the quarterbacks. I can't begin to describe how absolutely nutty the quarterback landscape has been all week. I mean, it's like, even if you want to start at the Russell Wilson deal, because that was really the first.
So it kicked it off.
I guess Wentz got traded, but that's not all right. if you're still that high on Terry McLaurin, I apologize for the depression that's going to kick in this year. I'm very sorry. But Russell Wilson, right? Like that was the deal. That's really what kind of set everything off. The Seattle Seahawks traded away Russell Wilson. It was, multiple first-round picks: Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, right? Second-round pick, and I think they swapped seconds.
Yeah,
insane. I've been shitting on Jerry Jeudy now for 2 seasons. Okay, I'm not even gonna say that.
You've been under market. The market was ridiculously high.
Yeah, I've been shitting on top 5 Jerry Jeudy for 2 seasons. Like there are people that still believe that he's that guy. And my favorite quote ever, Russell Wilson said, "God gave me a right hand, throw the ball deep to Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick. Whoever else there is." Jerry Jeudy is not going to be Tyler Lockett. All right. I think that's more Tim Patrick. One of my favorite quotes. That's got to be a top football quote that I've
framed.
Heard. Billy said before we went on with Austin Gayle, like just him saying, "God gave me a right hand to throw a football" is one of the greatest football quotes of all time. So it's been a hell of a week. But let's start with Russell Wilson, Tom.
Yep.
A lot of people are saying it's going to affect Sutton the most. Jerry Judy's going to be great. Albert O, right? They should all get an absolute bump.
Boost.
The player that I think matters the most here, aside from say Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon's still a free agent, so I haven't touched on that. But I think Tim Patrick is going to be the guy that benefits the most from this.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not saying benefits the most like he's going to be a wide receiver 1. He's their wide receiver 1. Tim Patrick goes from a guy that was good enough to be annoying to Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy to a guy that is legitimately competing for top tier wide receiver 3, getting into wide receiver 2 weeks. He's a big body, over the middle, good target.
Yeah.
Kind of does a little bit of what both Jeudy and Sutton do.
Hey, he's a nice blend. Yeah.
And he's the most reasonably priced of the wide receiver group. So I think he benefits the most from this value-wise in fantasy. If I had to pick one guy out of this, I want Tim Patrick because those other 2 guys have just skyrocketed in value already.
Yes. And I think you're right with that. So we always love to talk about value. You're right. From a value rise point of view, someone who was not really on a lot of people's radar being pushed onto the radar is a bigger shift than the renewed hopes for 2 people that we've seen sliding, depending on where you started them, sliding down your roster priority. So I'd agree with that. For me, I just don't know what their offense is going to look like. It was very run heavy, very tight end heavy this year. Obviously, we saw the lack of production to the wide receivers. Just because you have a better quarterback now does not mean that you're going to get a huge bump as far as passing goes. But, of course, you are going to get more efficiency and you are going to get some more passing yards because you're going to get into better positions, longer drives, more professionalism in that position, management, all sorts of stuff. So that, for me, is the biggest interest. How much of a boost is this offense going to see? So whilst it may be good, is it going to be that good for our fantasy impact? That's the unknown for me at the moment. But I agree, Tim Patrick, definitely big rise.
Well, and look at the division now. The division has become insane. The Raiders get 2 insane pass rushers and a defensive back from Indianapolis, Max Crosby, Chandler Jones. The Chargers, Khalil Mack, and J.C. Jackson. The Chiefs haven't done a whole ton defensively, but they did add Juju Smith-Schuster. And oh my gosh, who's the other team? Tom Lee. Oh, and then Denver adding what
Denver themselves,
the team we're talking about. Jesus Christ, adding what they've added on their defense with Randy Gregory and just unbelievable. So you got the guys like Sutton and Jeudy are gonna be probably primary targets for those teams to cover. They got to play those teams 2 times a year. That's 6 games. Tim Patrick running over the middle, being left against nickel coverage, some linebackers and mismatches. Russell Wilson is a smart quarterback, and over the last 2 years, he has averaged 10 points per game with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
That's props to him as a guy that came out of nowhere.
Well done.
79 targets, 85 targets, 51 receptions, 53 receptions, 742 yards and 734 yards respectively. He averages about 14 yards per reception and has about 1,000 yards in air yards each season, while averaging 5 or more touchdowns over 2 years with suboptimal quarterback play while having Judy and Sutton sometimes. So I think Tim Patrick is a guy here that I really like. I really like. 6'4", 210 pounds, got a contract. They're going to use him. So I like it. And you have to pay plenty of rounds less. Like we're talking 10 rounds less that you have to take the other two. So it's easily Timmy Patrick for me. Let's kick the next one. Oh gosh, you pick the next one. Who do you want to talk about next in the quarterbacks?
As far as impact goes, I mean, we haven't talked about Kirk Cousins getting re-signed for that extra year in his contract. So I think it's nice, and it's
bonus.
Well, it is a bonus. We'll keep it brief because Minnesota is one of those situations that's pretty well known. Not a lot's changing as far as we know. We know Irv Smith now. There's a bit more freedom, and he's coming back healthy next year. Should assume that tight end 1 position for them
I don't
again.
care about Irv Smith.
Doesn't really matter, but it's just one of those known values on their roster. The unknown value was what's Kirk Cousins' future. Is he going to get moved away? Is he not? It's just nice to see him be extended back for that 1 extra year, and it carries like quite a large dead cap hit next year. So you still have 48 million owed, which you can't just sneak in as a signing bonus before a thing and then scrap him. So 1 to 2 extra years of Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, unless they move his contract somewhere else next year. It's good. It's just good insurance for our positions.
I think they know what they have in him.
No. I think it just came down to money. It's like we want to make sure we keep him around so that if we do want to extend him or re-sign him after that point, when we do have cash and when the salary cap's gone up, we need to make sure our boy's still here. Which I think is really good for our assets in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think it's good because if you're in a super flex draft and you waited, right, you're waiting on that QB1, Kirk Cousins doesn't look like a man that wants to retire. He's a very good quarterback. And now you've got 2 years. So when you were trading for him or people were getting rid of him this early, that's why you don't trade quarterbacks early in an offseason. Now you thought you were getting a 1-year rental. Now you've got a 2-year lock with really good weapons. The reason I'll just say this. Twitter did its thing again when Conklin signed elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it was all about Irv Smith all over again. One thing I've learned this week and last week talking to some real top-tier analysts is that if you're an undersized tight end that's not super athletic, you're just a worse slot receiver.
Yeah.
So I don't want Irv Smith. If somebody in your league is still hype about Irv Smith, I would find that player and trade Irv Smith to him for any second that you can get because there's better options. And dare I say it, tight end looks like a deeper position this year. I know.
Yep.
I know.
Death taxes end.
I know. Every year, just when I thought I was out, the tight ends pulled me back in. And I think it actually holds weight this year. Hooper signed in Tennessee. There's a late round flyer for you if you want one. I'd take Hooper over Irv Smith for sure. Price is going to be way cheaper, so do it. Way cheaper. The quarterback I want to talk about is a guy who's kind of gotten shit on, seeing as how the 3 other quarterbacks are now in that division.
Yep.
I mean, in a division with now Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, the ghost of Baker Mayfield, now resides Mitchell Trubisky. And
Trubisky. Yes.
In the Slack, I think it was you that asked, who do we like as the best move of the offseason? I think it was at that point. It was 3 or 4 days ago. And I said it was Trubisky. And I didn't think it was relatively close either. For fantasy football purposes, Mitch Trubisky was super duper underrated. I think it's easy to crap on him and whatever, but if I gave Sam Darnold the Adam Gase treatment for it can get better. I'm going to give Mitch Trubisky the Matt Nagy. But in his second year, he was QB 15. All right. In his third year, he's QB 26. Not good. And then QB 28, so not good in Chicago 2020. But look at the rushing yards, 248, 421. And what happened to his fantasy value is he didn't run as much, 193 and 196 rushing yards. He didn't rush as much, and he wasn't as efficient. But in 2020, the year that was so dreadful that they yeeted him, he had 16 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. That's not bad. He had 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions the year before, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in his sophomore season. I think in Pittsburgh, he will have the most complete team that he's ever had around him. I don't love the offensive line again.
Yeah, I was going to flag that. Yep.
And they've lost James Washington and now Ray McLeod.
And Juju.
And Juju. Lots of talent, though, in the offensive line in the draft. I think that they have to not ignore that this time. There's not a running back that they will draft in the first round like morons again. They can actually address the offensive line. They've been very quiet on that front in free agency, which I thought was very weird. But to me, it's hammers home that they're taking an offensive lineman in the first round. They should take in the first 2 rounds, for Christ's sake. But Mitch Trubisky for fantasy football, Tom, you can trade a 203 and 204 for him and likely net him because somebody picked him off of waivers, unless they're lunatics like me, where in drafts you wait till round 14 to take your second quarterback, like I've done this year because I go hero QB because I hate myself. But that's why I play fantasy in the first place. He is a player that I feel super comfortable with playing in the super flex spot.
Yeah.
I feel totally fine. I think that he'll be able to lock on to Deontay Johnson. I feel like he'll be able to throw the ball deep to Claypool.
Yep.
I think that he'll be able to find Pat Freiermuth, and he'll definitely be able to either check down or just hand the ball off to Najee. Will he be much better than Ben? I don't know. But if he runs like he did in 2018, I don't care how well he plays quarterback. I have said this a bunch of times. To me, and I know it's kind of cliche to use him as a reference, but Mitch Trubisky very much resembles what Ryan Tannehill did and that career path. And if there's going to be an opportunity for Mitch Trubisky, he must use his legs like Tannehill did when he got the job in Tennessee. And if he does that, I'm happy to have him as a top 20 option at the position.
Yeah, the only question I had on our boy Trubisky was where do you think the value sits as far as acquire or trade away? So anytime an asset rises in value, there's an opportunity to sell or buy, right? Because you're either buying him on a large scale increase, or you're buying him before it hits the ceiling, or you're selling before it hits the ceiling, whatever you want to do. So for me, the contract is a little bit of a flag because it's a prove-it contract, right? The 2 years, 14 mil, but only 5 million of that's guaranteed. The rest is incentivized. I'm hoping that incentivization is going to be based on him starting and playing and showing them what he's got for that first year, right? That's the current thinking, and that's where I'm with you. If he plays and starts, then all of that's true, and I really like him as a buy. If that's not true, and they do something insane like draft Matt Corral in the first round, then we've got a bit of a shitstorm. Now, they shouldn't do this, but they also went and drafted a running back with no offensive line last year in the first round. So NFL teams do weird shit all the time. We know this.
You accounting for bad management is.
So for me, it's a weird one. There's a few places I've got Trubisky, and I'm very happy about. Now he's got an opportunity to re-enter the league and become something again. But there's also a thought in the back of the head, if someone really wants to overpay for him, I'm kind of okay with sending him away as well. So it's just something to keep your mind on. It's probably not something you want to move right now. It's still really, really far in the off season.
You want to know what I would do if I could? I would trade Tua for Mitch Trubisky in a first immediately.
High first.
Didn't matter. Anyone.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Obviously prefer 23, but I think if you're high on Tua and what he can bring, you might as well just add Trubisky instead. Because to me, the only difference is that Tua hyper targets short, so he's a little more accurate, right? But new coach, new system, bad offensive line, iffy run game. I know they signed Edmonds, but you start connecting those dots and first round pedigree, whatever, job security, whatever.
Yeah, it's
for
another
at
make or
least
break
1
year.
year, if you got Trubisky for nothing, which you likely would have, unless your dynasty team or dynasty league is 6 years old.
Yeah.
Then you can take an opportunity to take an asset that has declined over since he's come into the league. People's changed their opinions on him, but now they give him a boost. So if you were iffy on Tua at all and you had him, there's an opportunity. Go trade him for Mitch Trubisky. Get that plus. Get that asset. You have Trubisky for at least 1 year because his average is $7 million, and his only guaranteed money, I believe, it's guaranteed at signing.
Yeah.
So his first year, he's going to be the starter in Pittsburgh. He's going to.
Yeah.
Unless they totally shits the bed, what are they going to do? Go to Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, take a rookie in the first round, and then let Trubisky play? I don't think that they take a rookie in this draft. I think that they know that next year is the year to do that, and next year would be the year that they can just cut ties with Trubisky. I think if they rolled out Ben Roethlisberger, knowing that he was going to be awful, then I think they ride the same way with Trubisky, in my opinion. So I would definitely go and trade Tua right now for Trubisky, get that first-round pick, and double up your assets. That's just how we roll. What do you want to hit next? Do we need to mention do we need to mention the other quarterback free agent? I don't think we need to care about Teddy Bridgewater.
No, Teddy and Tyrod. I mean, they're all on backup money.
Although Tyrod, I would go and get Tyrod because Daniel Jones is fucking terrible.
Especially 2 years, $11 million, $8 million guarantee for Tyrod. It's a really good move. It's a nice backup move for them. At the very least, if he doesn't play, he should help improve Daniel Jones a little bit. But that might be a lost cause. We do have to dive into to the Watson because
we will. I'm just saying for free agent signings and for Tyrod. Tyrod was fine when he played. Even I believe he played last year and he was just fine for fantasy. He was rushing the ball. He was great.
I mean, does Tom Brady count as a free agent re-signing? We haven't covered him really on this.
I don't think I ever counted him out for the year. I think
none of us dropped him. Put it that way.
I think there was a feeling that he was coming back, and boy, did he save me in so many leagues. My God, so many leagues. No, I don't think we got to count him. He's gonna be dope.
All good.
Yeah, he's gonna be dope. He's gonna be elite again. Top 10 quarterback, easily lock it in. It's not even gonna be close. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson now.
Yes.
Let's have this conversation. If you missed our prelude to this conversation, rewind and you'll hear it. This is a fantasy football show, so we're going to talk this impact and how it affects fantasy football. I think Deshaun Watson is going to have some rust to shake off. If you've drafted him and stayed confident he was going to play, you're very happy. If you're acquiring him right now, don't. It's too late. You're basically
you're gonna have to pay for a top 5 guy.
You're gonna have to pay more than you would for Joe Burrow at his height last year. You're gonna have to pay more than Lamar Jackson. You're gonna have to pay more than probably Patrick Mahomes at this point. He is the new hotness. So if you're gonna go and trade for him now, don't. Just save yourself. Unless there's a player, obviously, there's someone in your league that just doesn't want to have that headache.
Yeah. Would you trade away Deshaun Watson for Burrow straight?
No.
Okay.
No, I would.
Because it's just one of those ones of the guy rising. It's all. This is where it should be. What he should lead to. What he should get back to. It's just one of those interesting ones. You're not going to get anything on top of a Burrow, obviously, for that. But just a little thought that occurred. Continue.
I think you can because. Well, it depends. The people who have Joe Burrow either look at him as he's a locked-in top-tier quarterback, or you have some reasonable people that realize that he was a moderately very good quarterback up until 2 or 3 games at the end of the year, and then was okay in the playoffs, and then absolutely had a Super Bowl game. But he's still kind of a pylon. He does not run, and all of those quarterbacks are safe, but they don't provide the floor, and they need those insane games.
Big games,
So I think that Watson's history of legitimately being a constant top-tier fantasy asset would net you a plus, especially the team that he's going to. Cleveland's a good team for him.
Yeah.
The best offensive line he's played behind. He's got Amari
Easily.
Cooper now, fantastic asset.
Good.
David Njoku is probably the best tight end he's ever played with, if I'm not mistaken. And he's got the backing of a phenomenal running game. We saw Matt Schaub in Houston. I'm playing helmet connections here, so bear with me. But Matt Schaub in Houston threw for 4,800 yards with a fantastic outside zone running scheme and Arian Foster. And Nick Chubb can do what Arian Foster could do. And he's got a running game and a better offensive line than the Texans had at the time. If I'm just connecting dots that way, just for fun, no meaningful analysis out of it. But I don't see a reason that Deshaun Watson cannot put up big numbers. And I know he doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins like he did the last time he played, right? But he elevated Brandon Cooks, and I think Amari Cooper can do what Brandon Cooks could do. I don't see why he can't.
Yeah.
So I would definitely think that you can get that plus for Joe Burrow.
So from a value point of view with Cleveland now, for me, you're not really buying a lot of the pieces that are already on the team. You like with the Chubbs and that sort of thing, you kind of already own them. And like I think we said a few.
Well, that's not true because your ass traded for Nick Chubb just yesterday. So
yeah, you know I'm a weirdo like that.
You're lying.
Yeah,
You're
well,
lying to
sorry.
the people.
I speak on behalf of the people as opposed to myself. Normal people aren't going and buying Nick Chubb right now, but because there's no real value boost, and you know he's going to die on the roster, so it has to be very, very specific situation.
I think
you reckon? Okay, all right.
Here, I am the resident. I don't.
You
want
are. This is
Chubb
why I
on my
went
fantasy team.
Yeah.
If you listen to the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast regularly, I blame Nick Chubb for costing me 2 championships last year. I finally traded for him. He didn't do shit, fuck all, and it killed me. It's a lock this week, bro. It's a lock this week. It wasn't a lock.
Wasn't a lock.
And he didn't get, the touchdown he needed or the stupid long run. Here's the thing, though. The offense will get better under Watson, even a rusty Watson. Then, oh my God, it's a new drink name right there, the Rusty Watson.
The Rusty Watson.
Then the offense
let's not go with too much advertising stuff for Watson just yet.
In Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
So Baker was bad, notably bad. I don't care how much of a stan you are. Baker's been bad. That's why this situation came up. This is why they trashed him before acquiring Watson.
That's why they traded away 3 firsts, a second, and a fifth, and paid $230 million to someone.
213, more than that.
230, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought you said 213.
No, it's 6 in the morning, Tom. My math doesn't work.
I know. Yeah, I know. That's how dedicated you are, and I always love it for it. But back to Nick Chubb. His value increase, he's got to think that offense is going to get better. So if the offense gets better and there's more goal line opportunities, and they do what I mentioned earlier in the show, and they get rid of Kareem Hunt. Yeah. Now Kareem Hunt's not there to vulture touchdowns, and I doubt they use Dearness Johnson the same way they use Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb has an opportunity to hit that 15-plus touchdowns, and I think he'll thrive that way. So if he catches 30 passes, which is totally reasonable to think he might, and he gets a better offense, 1,500 yards rushing and 15 touchdowns, I think his value definitely increased here.
Yeah.
I think he's moved up. Like, I would take Nick Chubb over J.K. Dobbins. I would take Nick Chubb over Cam. I wouldn't take him over Cam Akers. I would take Nick Chubb right around Joe Mixon. Like, I think he's right back up there to me because he doesn't have Baker at the helm.
Yeah.
That's a huge increase for that whole. If the whole offense is increasing, Nick Chubb has to increase too.
Okay. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, like, I still went and bought the guy, right? Like,
you did.
I still want him. But for me, like, I'm not riding any of the Kareem Hunt in value just yet. I actually do think they stay with the same template, the one shift on. Like, Nick Chubb's kind of like a fly-in, fly-out worker, right? Like, he'll come in for a drive. It didn't really matter who they had. They always wanted to, like, yes, they want him in for the crucial touches, but they're still switched out to the Dearness Johnsons, whoever the other running back was going to be. They still split the carries pretty evenly just to keep him healthy. So I've got a feeling that still stays the same. But you're right. The boost comes with the increased red zone opportunities, the likelihood of a threat on the ground and Watson running, opening up more for the offense, that does give a value boost to someone like Chubb. Yeah.
But how much of that was because it is Kareem Hunt as the other running back? How much of that is because they had an all-pro as the other guy who could be an RB1 on any other team?
That could be absolutely true, and I'll take the boost if that's the case because I have a lot of Chubb still. But for me, I'm just not writing that check until it's written. Until I see it. So yeah. But yes, more people aren't really buying him, but you're right. There could be an opportunity here if people are still holding on to see.
Now, I want to talk about Amari Cooper because a lot of people on the Bird app went nuts and said that he's top 10 locked in. I am not going there because Amari Cooper has never reached his potential. I think he has one wide receiver one total. Yeah. I'm not sure what he has points per game, or it might be as one in points per game. But he's going to miss time during the year. Now he's in a cold – late year cold environment. He's not.
That Happy's tightening up already.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that risk. But again, it's not Baker throwing it to him. Now, I loved this for Amari Cooper with Baker because if you believe in vacated targets being a thing, you would think they would target Amari the most, play him in the slot, Donovan Peoples-Jones outside. Now, if they sign Will Fuller, which I think is the expectation.
What's meant to happen, yeah.
Will Fuller, and it would be Peoples-Jones on the outside if they don't draft another wide receiver and you move Amari Cooper inside. Now, all of a sudden, you have a, 27-year-old former first-round pick who's going to be on that team, at least for this year, and he still has, I think, a couple of years left. He's going to be there, and now he gets Deshaun Watson. So if you were buying Brandon Cooks when you had Deshaun Watson, that's kind of where I would have Amari Cooper at this point. 130 targets, more than likely coming in for Cooper. Good targets. He could easily catch 85 of those bad boys, easily have 1,100 yards, easily have 8 touchdowns. You should be buying Amari Cooper. If you want to sell Amari Cooper because somebody's crazy enough to think that he's a locked-in top 10, go ahead. Do that.
That's
I'm never going to tell you not to do that, ever. But I would also be willing to pay as high as a 205 for Amari Cooper. I'd be willing to pay a 202 in this draft class for Amari Cooper. No problem. I would do that. No problem.
What about a late first, Thomas?
No. You're not cracking the one. You're not, even at 112, you're not cracking the one.
Yeah, so that's the line, right? So, and really the early second is because of the uncertainty of what's going to happen with the draft, because if a bunch of these guys don't get taken early, the depth will drop a little bit.
Part of the reason I'm hesitant to do that, though, Tom, is I've been listening to JJ Zacharyson lately, who everyone should be because the man is a genius. And I believe recently he did a study that pointed out almost all rookies increased in value in their second year. And he has a limit to which ones actually didn't. And I think it was like 47% or 50. I can't remember which side it is, but it's about 53% of rookies gained value in their second year. So I understand the hesitancy to take a player in Cooper, but I am a big fan of getting players like Cooper for relatively cheap that are going to be able to be my 4th and 5th wide receiver on my dynasty team that I can plug in every week with a great quarterback, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. The last time we saw him play, I'm willing to, if you can get that as your 4th wide receiver, or you can take a shot on, I don't know, Mechie in the 2nd round. No, I'll take Amari Cooper, and that's to me what's important.
Yeah, I agree with that, right? Like you said though, the Amari Cooper to the moon stuff's just a bit ridiculous. So
that's too much.
Yeah, I mean, like mid to late wide receiver 2 in Dynasty, given his age, given where he's at, and given what they could still add. If you can get him near that price, I'm pretty happy with it. But like you said, you want that to be your 4th or 5th on your team. You're not looking to go, oh, my new wide receiver 2 is Amari Cooper, because there's still a lot to be written there and still a lot to be seen. Even when it does come to Deshaun Watson's case itself, like, you know, what if he does miss half the season with a suspension, which could still happen? The first half of the year with Amari Cooper, all of a sudden not looking so fun. So, lots to be written that first year. By all means, he's going to be a good floor, good option later in sort of flex and later wide receiver spots. But, don't pay top 10. Sell for top 10 if you can.
So with Amari Cooper playing with Dak Prescott, who I think we would both agree is pretty fucking good. Not great, but pretty fucking good. 8 touchdowns last year. He was hurt. 103 targets, 68 receptions, 865 yards, and was notably frustrated with how he was used. That was in 15 games played. He finished
statistically, that's still a really good year. Like it's just a solid,
absolutely fine. Wide receiver 27. He had obviously the 38-point game in Week 1 against Tampa Bay, where he went absolutely bananas. But after that, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of 15-plus points. I believe 2 of those were 20-plus games. I am more than okay sending my 203 away for that.
Yes.
Because you got to expect that at least he's going to have a couple more of those games in Cleveland.
And like you said, red zone opportunities go up. Field opens up a bit more. Like you're going to get more looks with an open Amari Cooper as opposed to stuck on the outside, back foot, throw away, just with how that offense is moving.
And what did I say? 130 targets and 85 receptions? Well, let's see. 130 targets, 119 targets, 130 targets. Like that's right around. That's his zone. Anywhere from 130 to basically 120 targets and 92, 79, 75, 83, 72. Deshaun Watson is a boost for Amari Cooper in his career quarterback play. So you've got to think that those become a little bit more efficient. So, yeah, I would easily be willing to trade that away, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah. What's your line? Is it a first rounder? Like, is that? I know you're a little more willing because we're going to talk about the next one. We're going to move on to wide receivers now, and the player we're going to talk about after is going to be Allen Robinson when we come back from break. And there's a nice comparison I have for the two. So I just want to wonder, what is your?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to pay it first. I mean, for me with this class, because of the type of receiver we're getting in this class, a lot of them aren't going to hit straight away, week 1. They're not going to get a lot of targets. They're going to have to learn the offense. They're going to have to, their talent, their skills are not designed to boom from week 1. But a lot of these guys are going to start skyrocketing in value towards the back half of the year because as they find their feet, as they become healthier, as their assets start to show through, and the connection with the quarterback gets better. Like these are guys you want to have on your roster and want to acquire before the halfway point of the season. So for me, all those first, even the 201, because it's pretty close to it, depending on what happens at the draft, they're guys I'd still probably prefer over Cooper because I kind of know what you're getting in Cooper, and I don't think that value is going to drop or rise severely throughout the year. So if you want to cash them out at any point for a Cooper, I still think you're going to get that opportunity at some point. So for me, I'd stick with the first and what it could be. And then still, by all means, if you want Amari Cooper on top of that later on, I'm sure you can find that value.
I also just don't think you're going to have to trade that high for Amari Cooper, especially once the Watson suspension comes down, which you got to assume is going to, because that's kind of what the NFL does to, like, we good now, the way things work with them. So got to assume that's coming down. So, yeah, exactly. Look, when we come back, we're going to talk a little underdog fantasy sports. And then we're going to get into some wide receiver free agent happening. We're at about 50 minutes. We're going to be a little bit longer than our usual time just because there's so much information.
A lot of shit to get through.
A lot of shit to get through. That's right. So here's another clip from a show with Pat Daugherty. Sit tight. When we come back, we are going to talk some underdog. Can't wait.
I feel like the combine needs like a change. Like it's become very popular, and I think that's a great thing. But I think a lot of times these players, like they've been on their feet, they've been doing interviews all days. The athletic training is at 7 p.m. at night. Like I want
that's dumb.
Yeah, I want first off, I want it at like as soon as they wake up. I want them to choose when they're going to run everything good. I want all that. Also, just 1 year, I want them to run it in pads. Just do it, then do it without, and see if the trends are the same. Like if people are as fast in pads. That's all I want.
You're saying Dry Archer would have never happened if they had run in pads? Is that what you're saying?
Probably not.
Can we get like an XFL like shoot for the ball drill? Just something. Yeah, it's something.
That's a bad idea.
Billy's not wrong with the combine takes. It is definitely overdone. And I remember rushing home to watch the combine during my lunch hour on the NFL Network and missing classes to watch it because it happened in the middle of the day. And I've run those drills, and it is tiring, and you don't want to be there till 11:30. So I think that's why you saw some of the agility drills being skipped, and some of the bad times, and maybe some bad workouts, etc. The combine is definitely broken. So go back and listen to that episode with Pat Daugherty. He definitely talks about a way to fix it. Guys, I want to talk about Underdog Fantasy because if you're listening to the show and you haven't played yet, right? If you go to underdogfantasy.com and register, and you use our promo code FULLTILT, and you deposit, up to $100, you're going to get that money back. This is very important. You're doubling your money, and it's for free. And March Madness right now is going absolutely bananas. And what Underdog is doing is they're giving you a booster, a value booster, which especially with how many prop bets there are for college basketball right now, you're going to want to be hitting on. Kyler Edwards, right? Houston, over under 12.5 points. You smash which one you want to go and hit. You get that boost. I mean, what I've done, Kyler Edwards, 12.5 points. I hit the over. Tyler Burton of Richmond, 9 rebounds. I went the under. Jacob Gilliard, 3.5 assists. Richmond smashed it. Bet $5 can turn that $5 into $45. Why wouldn't you do that, especially when Underdog has got you covered for double that money? It's free money. Use it, spend it, and go win some more. You can get the app, easy to use. It walks you right through the whole process. Don't be afraid to go and play Underdog. Get into the sensation that not even just that. You can do best ball drafts. And not only can you do best ball drafts, you can best ball draft with the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast. We're going to have a ton of private lobbies. We have one open right now. You can go to my Twitter account, ThomasTippleFF. You can hit me up. I'm going to get you that link. Go and draft against myself and Jacob and try to shut us up. Win that. You're also going to get a shout out on these here programs, letting everyone know that you and your handle on Underdog Fantasy whooped our asses. You're going to want to go and do that. So again, go to underdogfantasy.com, use promo code FULLTILT if you haven't registered already, get your money doubled, and join us and everyone else in the Underdog community having a great time making these games matter just that little bit more. Tom Lee, wide receivers.
Yeah.
It is, after listening to Ben Gretch and Austin Gayle talk about their love for wide receivers and their seeming disdain for running backs, I've committed myself to dedicating more time to the anti-fragility and zero RB methods. I'm going to do it for the rest of this offseason. I've been kind of half-assed employing these in my drafts this year. I am going to change that. I am committing now. I am in. I'm going to test it out. I trust them. Making these wide receiver moves that much more important to me. And there are some receivers that have not signed yet. And obviously they're going to sign. I don't think guys like Jarvis Landry are going to stay a free agent and all that. But Allen Robinson, we were all wondering where he was going to go. There was a rumor that he was sitting around waiting to see what happened with Deshaun Watson because he wanted to play with a good quarterback for once in his freaking life. Yeah, Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky. And Mitch Trubisky was good for him in fantasy. He hyper-targeted the shit out of him, and I loved it. But he gets a 3-year, $46.5 million contract. Obviously, again, guaranteed money and the years and all that stuff. This is really, it looks like a 2-year contract. Average is $15.5 million. His total guaranteed is $30.7. Don't know what the guaranteed is at signing as of now. This could be a 2-year contract for a 28-year-old wide receiver coming off of a down year.
Yeah.
The Rams absolutely were the landing spot. Odell Beckham Jr., what is he? He's a free agent. Robert Woods, the 30-plus-year-old wide receiver coming off a late-season ACL tear, and he's been rumored to be on the block, and they're willing to move him. Allen Robinson is stepping into that role that made Odell Beckham fantasy relevant last year. That's made Robert Woods, I had it brought up, absolutely fantastic for fantasy football, and they're not the same wide receiver. I totally get it. They play different. I actually think Allen Robinson is a better wide receiver than Robert Woods, and he is better fantasy pedigree than Robert Woods did. So Allen Robinson landing in LA is an absolute smash spot. Matthew Stafford just got the long-term deal. You don't got to worry about what the quarterback situation is going to be like. Cooper Kupp is going to draw all of the coverage, right? And it's really a two-man show at wide receiver for them right now. Skoranek sucks. Tutu Atwell's an undersized wide receiver that never should have been picked in the second round. So it's Allen Robinson and it's Cooper Kupp. I want every bit of this offense for the defending Super Bowl champions. What say you? Because I have questions regarding Amari Cooper and Allen Robinson.
What I can say is thank God, because I have a lot of Robinson sitting that I could not play last year.
Yes, me too.
And don't get me wrong, like the way we play and the way I play fantasy, and we've talked about a lot over the last year and a bit, is value acquisition, right? So you're building rosters where you've got a lot of depth, a lot of valuable pieces sitting there. When one of your pieces completely tanks in value and becomes unusable both for your team and to trade away, that's the worst, right? Because you're sitting there going, I like the player. I'm watching him week in, week out, either be missed with targets, be like double covered, the offensive scheming away from him. It was just a shit show last year for Allen Robinson and has been for most of his career, even though he's been very productive for us for a lot of it. So I'm hoping, please, to stay healthy, get into this offense, get the ball thrown to you by Stafford, start producing again so I can actually ride out the next 2 years happy for him, finally, in a fantasy context. Because you're right, he walks in as the wide receiver 2 at the moment on that offense. It just seems like a great situation. I have no idea what the price is going to be on a guy like that because so many of us that have held for so long are not looking to cash out now. But at the same time, how do we evaluate? What do we call the line on it? And I think that's what you're talking about with Cooper. All of a sudden, you've got these guys who should produce very similarly. But where have you got them at from a value point of view? And what is your take between especially those two pieces when it comes to Dynasty?
I think that the boost in Allen Robinson's value is going to be one of those situations where if I can now trade Allen Robinson for Amari Cooper and a plus, I'm going to, or vice versa. I think that's where they are. I think they are almost dead even right now. I lean Robinson for sure, obviously, but I'm just as happy having Amari Cooper. And there's actually a dynasty team where last year I had Amari Cooper and Allen Robinson on one team, and I couldn't frickin' use either most of the year. But I think that trading either one of them for pretty much any sort of plus kind of gets it done for me. They both have contracts. They're both going to be there. They both get a quarterback boost. Allen Robinson is, to me, the better receiver, period. So
what's your limit? Is it the same limit as far as picks go for acquisition of A-Rob, or what's your vibe on that? I would
probably pay the 112 for Allen Robinson.
Okay, interesting. So there's a little bit of an edge there, but it's still pretty close. I was paying 112 for Robert Woods last year when they got Stafford, so I don't see why. And this is just what happens to me. I don't see why I would pay less for Allen Robinson in LA than I would have paid for Robert Woods in LA. Right. So I would easily pay a 205, 206, 204, 203 Amari Cooper, and I would easily pay the 112 and past. Sounds like we're going out to test the market today, Tom. We're going shopping later on to see what we can find.
Oh, I 100% will be tweeting out if I'm able to actually acquire Allen Robinson. The problem is people have been so waiting for their Allen Robinson shares to hit that I don't think you're actually going to get him.
That's the only question mark I have on it. But otherwise, if you can acquire him because one of the biggest flags we know, again, the scheme up there was a nightmare watching A-Rob play. But what we don't know is if there's been any regression as far as athletic talent goes. I haven't dived into film. It's not my area. So if someone can pull up a lot of clips of A-Rob playing last year and see what his separation like, see what his bursts like, there wasn't a lot of drops to speak of because a lot of the passes weren't catchable. So that's the sort of thing I can't really tell as far as where he's at from an athletic talent standpoint. But that's like the unknown value. But for me, if you can get him at any of those prices, I'm pretty happy.
100%. Can we just talk about the Christian Kirk contract for a minute?
Let's do it.
I feel like it's necessary to talk about the Christian Kirk contract It's 4 years. It's $72 million. I think they said it could be $81 million. It's
there's
only guaranteed.
incentivization.
It's only guaranteed 37. They can be out in 2 years, but after 40 million, 20 million a year, I think that's kind of an insane contract for them to have signed. I don't know what the Jaguars are doing. Apparently, one of the things that I have heard is that the GM of the Jaguars just loves Christian Kirk, and it seems like he's basing the rest of the offseason on Christian Kirk. So the Jaguars signed the cornerback from LA. I can't remember his name right now. I think he's one of the Williams in the NFL. And there was a thing on the Bird app, so take it for what you will, about it being because he played really well against Christian Kirk. So they signed him to a contract. I know, it hurts your head. And I don't know how true it is.
That can't be right.
Surely. I'm choosing to believe it because it is so asinine. I'm choosing to believe it. That's the narrative I'm running with, and you can't change my mind. I don't care what report you send me and show me.
I love it.
But for Christian Kirk, this obviously, if you watch the intro, it is death to Laviska Shenault. I think he is done. I think he has gone somewhere. I think a team like Atlanta should be offering.
Yeah, send him to Atlanta. Why
for
not?
a sixth round pick to the Falcons for Laviska Shenault.
Anyway. Yeah.
Replace Russell Gage. I mean, there's also a tweet that I saw. I want to say it was a Fabiano-esque analyst saying that Laviska Shenault's just not an NFL wide receiver. Maybe, but for a sixth round pick, obviously, I think the Jaguars will be looking to move him. But they bring in Zay Jones. I don't really care about that. And then they have Christian Kirk, as we were talking about, probably playing inside. I don't think he's an outside receiver. I think he'll play inside because I think one of the reasons he got the money, if I were to say, one of the reasons that Christian Kirk got the money is because he can play inside. Where did Trevor Lawrence like going the most last year? Aside into triple coverage, 40 yards downfield. It was over the middle of the field where Jamal Agnew saw success. Laquan Treadwell revitalized his career. Dan Arnold played well in that slot position. So I think for fantasy purposes, Christian Kirk is definitely a good floor wide receiver too. He's just making top 8 money, top 5 money. So there's security there, I guess, with him as a fantasy asset. But as a weekly stud, I just don't think so. Unless Trevor Lawrence takes just one of the biggest positive turns in NFL history. He was fucking bad. He was bad. None of the moves they've made to me scream that much of an improvement. I know that they got an offensive guard, but as they proved last year, that didn't really fucking do much. They're bringing back Cam Robinson. They're probably going to draft a tackle. They're probably drafting a tackle. I was going to say they were going to draft a tackle first, but I don't even think they're going to do that now because they brought Robinson back. They'll probably do something ridiculous and draft like Thibodeau number 1 because that'll help their franchise quarterback. But with Etienne coming back, I think the whole offense is going to get better. But for Christian Kirk specifically, are you even going to bother? I've already had some people DM me asking me if I want Kirk, but I needed to trade him at least a first because of his quote unquote contract value. So this is another type of trader that we didn't discuss before because it hadn't come up really. We started this show after free agency last year. Yeah. So the money trader is fucking hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Kenny Galladay's contract is basically the same as Christian Kirk. But no one was in my DMs asking me for a first last year for their Kenny Galladay. But all of a sudden, Christian Kirk, who's, as Billy stated, done less than Kenny Galladay has, is all of a sudden getting this giant boost in whatever trade value. So explain, make it make sense, as the kids would say to me, Tomley.
I don't think I can. I mean, Christian Kirk has always been one of those guys who's had, for some reasons, had a lot of hype around him, right? People were very excited when he went to Arizona. So even to purchase him at any point through his entire career, he's always been overvalued to me. Not just because he doesn't produce the level, but there's always been this promise of he can do more. He's more athletically talented. He's better. he can be more. And then I've never really wanted to go and get him. Like he's always been an ancillary piece that you add to a deal or you use to entice someone else out. So for me to switch mindset from that and go, okay, this guy's now definitely a wide receiver too, because Jacksonville decided they're going to overpay for him. I just can't get on board. Like, there's no roster where I see myself going, I want to add Christian Kirk to this roster. I don't know about you, because the acquisition price for me, I know I can go and arbitrate that value going somewhere else and buying someone else. So I don't know, like where would you put him as far as rookie picks go? Like, would you have him in that same conversation with the Coopers?
No, fuck no, absolutely not, 100%.
But I reckon if you're going to go buy him, that's where he's going to get pushed to. So,
but how can you justify that? Because of his contract? No thanks.
I can't.
Follow the money is not analysis. It's not
sound process.
It's not reasonable process. So if somebody's using that as I don't know. I don't think I would pay the $205 for Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
I don't get me
wrong. Like if he
I don't think
like,
I would.
Him,
maybe
right?
I would.
Yeah.
But I never believed in Christian Kirk as a fantasy asset. He was on a great offense with a better quarterback, probably. As I'm a naysayer
at this point,
of Kyler Murray's as well. But I think I'd rather the pick, because I don't think Christian Kirk's value could go up unless he has some like magical, amazing season. I think I would rather sit at 204 and draft Zamir White or some running back that gets decent enough draft capital over Christian Kirk.
Because I think that's the thing. Even if Christian Kirk does,
thank you, Derek Hale. Contracts aren't a sticky stat. Thank you. My God, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I know the Bird app went absolutely ballistic with this all week. And if I was recording the midweek tilt right now, I would be losing my fucking mind about it. But we're not. It's the Walkabout. But you're right. You're right, Derek. Thanks for popping in here, man. Contracts are not a sticky stat. And I don't think I could have said it much better myself. The same people that were telling you to go and buy Kenny Golladay should be going and telling you to buy Christian Kirk. But as Drew DF Bean Counter said last year about Golladay, he is a fake alpha. Christian Kirk is probably a mid beta, right?
Yeah.
Like he's not even a top tier beta he's not even Tyler Boyd, right? And I hate Tyler Boyd as a fantasy asset, but Christian Kirk's not even proven to be that. So it's gonna be a no for me, dog.
And I think one of the sentences you hear thrown around, especially around draft time, because they're coming up to that, is that the NFL will tell you what they think of these assets in the draft, right? The difference between that and a contract is that not every team offered Christian Kirk this contract, right? So we're not saying the NFL believes Christian Kirk is this athlete. We're saying Jacksonville has decided that he is worth this amount of money. And they've made some very questionable decisions over the last few years. So it's not to say, because they believe now he's worth this. If the rest of the NFL went through, hey, we'll all offer the same contract, and he went to Jacksonville, fine. I might change my mind on it. But just because one team wanted to overpay someone does not mean I'm going to push him up rankings, even if I see it. Because I was going to say before, if he goes up and it starts hitting, his price is only going to get higher and higher and higher. And then I want someone else because I want better value. So, yeah. Sadly for Christian Kirk, I hope he goes well for himself, but he's never going to be on a roster. Like,
great for him.
Yeah.
And none of this is like Christian Kirk fucking lose. I'm happy you got paid.
Yeah, we're not disparaging Christian Kirk. It's just
I'm happy you got paid. I don't want him at his
at any cost. There's no
You know who I would rather have?
Go on.
Russell fucking Gage.
Yes.
That's who I would rather have. Because I would rather pay lower for an ambiguous wide receiver room than I would have to pay up because he's the projected one in an offense when I think Russell Gage will do better. Chris Godwin's probably not going to be top tier healthy. They have no reason to rush him back. Sell Kirk for a second in a fucking minute. Now, I would not sell Kirk for less than 205 because the likelihood of after 205, in my opinion, for this class where the teardrop is, and not next week. Next week we have Josh Larkey on the show on March 22nd. But after that, we start our rookie breakdown. So we'll be able to talk a little bit more about where we have what rookies. We can't really give too much away with that right now because it kind of ruins the Saquon Barkley jersey giveaway, which I remember to mention it today. So there you go.
Damn right.
But I would sell Christian Kirk for 205, but I think you should be able to get more than that. I think I would be targeting a 201.
Yeah, that's what I was
but
going to say. 201 or
205,
202. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be able to net a good running back at that stage. I think you could get possibly a Sky Moore. I think a Wandale, whatever you want in that mid-second, because I think those guys are going to jump up if they hit capital, obviously. Yeah, I would definitely be doing that. Think about it. If it's 201 or it's 202, would you rather have Christian Kirk or Christian Watson? I'd rather have Christian Watson because he fits the archetype of an alpha, even though he doesn't necessarily have the production. But I would still roll the dice and take that risk over somebody like Christian Kirk, who's proven that he's just not what people actually want him to be.
Yeah.
Which is depressing, but not great. But I would rather have Russell Gage. Even when Godwin comes back, I think Russell Gage is filling Antonio Brown's role.
Yeah.
Middle receiver, going over the middle, a couple double moves, and the targets are going to be there. Tampa Bay with Tom Brady has thrown the ball way more. I think it's a full passing attempt to yardage. I can't remember exactly the stat because my brain's not working, but Tampa Bay throws the ball more than anybody else since they've had Tom Brady. And even when Winston was there with Arians and Fitzpatrick, they threw the ball all over the place. Russell Gage is going to another pass-happy team. He's only 26 years old. He's got 3 years, $20 million. So I'm going to guess with $15 million being signed, this is actually a 2-year contract.
It is a 2-year contract.
Yeah, it's basically going to end up being a 2-year contract. It says 3, but what we're learning with salary cap and what we're trying to learn is how to really look at these contracts a little more in depth. I think Russell Gage has a chance to be a weekly wide receiver 2 for weeks at a time. Right? Weeks at a time. Mike Evans is slowing down. And if you don't think he is, go and look at his target share. Go and look at his yards per target. Go and look at every production metric that Mike Evans has over the last couple of years. I think it's 4 years. FF_RTDB, our co-host of the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast, Jacob, has been mentioning this forever. But his metrics have been going down. He's a big body receiver who's slowing down. Right, but it's he has 10 touchdowns and he has 1,000 yards. All right, that's fine, but how often does that actually matter for you? And Russell Gage has an opportunity as a young receiver who can win a little bit on the outside, plays well enough against man and zone, and has the greatest quarterback of all time throwing in the football now. He was good with Matt Ryan last year. He was great with Matt Ryan last year. Now he's got an opportunity to come into this offense. And I love it for him. I think Russell Gage is a locked-in wide receiver 3, which are important, even though there's 672,421 wide receiver 3s. Russell Gage is one of the good ones.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to acquire him. I would not pay a second-round pick for him, but I would be trying to make. I know you're going to come at me with that question, so I answered it ahead of time. But I would be acquiring, depending on what the price is. I would at least be going and getting a filler. And Christian Kirk's 25.2 years old. Right, Russell Gage is 26.1. Yeah, I'll still take Russell Gage. I would actually take the player that we're going to talk about next, Juju Smith-Schuster, over Christian Kirk.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to get to. So, I mean, all I wanted to say on that was that the idea of these wide receiver 3s and why they are important is because they are more affordable versions. They're kind of like they're not the same value to your team as those deep shot running backs that all of a sudden have running back 1 production weeks, but they're going to have those weeks where you put them in a flex and they're going to score 10, 15, 20 plus points. And for me, Gage is that perfect spot. So the question I was going to ask, not necessarily what you're going to pay straight for Gage, but would you go in the same way that you talked about Tua to Trubisky? Would you go, and let's just hypothetically say you have Christian Kirk somewhere, what on top of Gage would you ask for Kirk? So if you're selling Kirk, it's Gage plus what for you? A late second or a different player. It's one of those awkward spots where you're not really going to add.
Give me that 2.7, right?
Yep.
Give me that 2.6. You have to try for that.
Yep.
I would take that if I were trying to. If someone were trying to offer me Russell Gage and 2.07 for my Christian Kirk, you can have him.
So
2.06, you can have him.
Yeah.
Right, because these aren't the cornerstones of your dynasty rosters as is. Right, these are probably your 5th wide receiver. So all you're doing is expanding your roster and doing what? Our favorite thing? Acquiring total value and at cost, which is the It's the chef's kiss. It is the most important. It's the fucking number one important thing. You know what I'm saying? So, very, very clutch. Another receiver you want to talk about, right. Juju. Let's talk about Juju.
Let's get into Juju. Yeah.
Let's talk about Juju because, again, I am a known hater of Juju. I think he's overrated. I think that his first couple of years in the league boosted his value to just an obscene amount, and I don't think it's ever caught up from that.
Yep.
But now I don't think Andy Reid has supported a wide receiver too. I think Linda Lyons on Twitter mentioned this, and she kind of got some flack for it. Be nice to her. She's a wonderful lady. Mentioned this, that he supported a wide receiver too in his system for like 20 some years or something like that. Just absolutely insane. But we've seen Pringle be successful. We've seen Nicole Hardman when he's not dropping the football. He can be successful, and we know Juju is a red zone weapon.
Yeah.
So when it comes to a possession wide receiver, I said this when he signed, I think he's got a very nice wide receiver 24 finish ahead of him. I think they're going to need him, right, with that cover 2 shell that's just going to just be played every game for every team in that conference now, in that division now. I think they're going to need him in the arms race, and if he's healthy at 25 years old, he's got a fully guaranteed contract this year. He's worth it to me. Yeah.
I think that's
100%.
Like Juju is, like, you know, he's a decent wide receiver. He's not the wide receiver. The issue is everyone paid that wide receiver 1 price 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. So what? That's gone, right? That's done. It's over. We all know what he is now. We all know where he is now. The thing I like in this situation is he's different to the Pringles, to Demarcus Robinson? Is that who they're playing there as well? Where he becomes that foil for Kelsey, where if you're going to run 2 slants, you're going to run a little hook, you're going to run something, an option route over the middle. Juju thrives on that, especially in the red zone. So you've got the hills deep. I'm not going to talk about Mecole Hardman. Probably never going to play on that position, but you get the point, right? You've got the deep targets, you've got the medium targets, which Kelsey can still do. Juju's that shorter one. You know, it's what they sort of wanted Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be last year, where they're sort of dumping off to him. He becomes that out option.
Yeah, he can run the crossers. He can run the
it's not the sexy stuff.
Kelsey.
But for the amount of times that Mahomes throws the ball, like, he's going to get production. He's going to do well. And if he becomes a red zone threat at all, at his current price,
Let's be honest. If Kelsey gets hurt again and misses a game again, Noah Gray's not going to be the backup. Juju is going to be the backup, right? So he's essentially a tight end as it is, and he's so cheap right now. I'm just on Keep Trade Cut right now. I'm scrolling down. Top 50, no sir, right? So it just goes to show, and it's 0.5 PPR. I understand that. I get it, but I'm still going. I don't see him. Oh my gosh, he's way down there. I must have missed him because there's no way he's behind some of these guys, but I'm just going to look him up. So this is good airtime. Hold on. Wide receiver 40 on Keep Trade Cut right now. So go and acquire before that shoots back up again, because it's going to. But he's definitely an acquire. I think he's going to have weeks where he helps your team. I think he's going to have more weeks where he doesn't. But again, the same situation where you're basing it off Christian Kirk. You're trading Christian Kirk for Juju and that plus, for that Juju and 204 and that Juju and 203, because somebody out there is going to want to follow the freaking money. Tom Lee, it's about an hour and 20. I know there's so many more positions to talk about. We talk about tight ends. No fullback news yet, but when Patrick Ricard signs, I'll definitely let everyone know. We're not going to do that, right? Austin Hooper. There's not really any tight ends to really mention.
There's a few little pieces around, like, with the rest of the position. So there's 2 running backs or 3 running backs I want to mention, and there is 1 tight end that I do want to mention.
Right. We're going to do that next week, because I think next week there's going to be more free agent stuff really going into the draft. We're going to see the dust settle. We'll quickly catch up on quarterback and wide receiver and some running back, which we didn't actually hammer home too much running back today either. So we're going to talk about running back.
There's more, like you said. Those are about to drop. So hopefully next week we get a full slate of the running back moves, because there's still a few pieces to fall into place.
So Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, what I think happens with Kareem Hunt. Oh, I just want to mention Boston Scott did resign in Philly, so good luck with that nightmare. everyone, but like Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, those guys haven't signed yet. We're gonna wait for them to sign before we really talk about them. Juju and Jackson Mahomes TikTok incoming. Look, man, Derek, I understand, but do yourself a favor. Go on Twitter, right? Go on Twitter and go into your settings. When you go into your settings, you'll be able to go to where you mute things and just mute TikTok, Jackson Mahomes. Jackson, Juju, Mahomes, TikTok. Mute it, and it'll take out every single tweet that has those phrases in it for you and save yourself the anguish. And if you're on Facebook, just get off of it altogether because it's a cesspool. So do yourself that favor. It's an absolute cesspool. Get off it in the first place. That's my number one tip to you. And just mute it. Mute it, man, and you won't have to see it. And then you can enjoy Kansas City Chiefs games again. You can just mute Brittany, Jackson, Juju, TikTok, and you will lead a better life. You'll never have to worry about it again. I did it last year, and you know what? It was absolutely phenomenal. I didn't have to worry about it once. So go and do that. Save yourself the headache, mate. Trust me. You'll enjoy Kansas City football once again because it's going to be everywhere in the main. Look, Tom Lee, we're at an hour and 22. I woke you up an hour early and didn't mean to, thanks to daylight savings times. We got the show in, and it was done. Genius, gracias, fuck Facebook. You're absolutely right. Or whatever they're calling it now, the metaverse. Fuck it. It's a cesspool. It's not great.
Yeah.
If you think Twitter and Reddit have poor fantasy takes, I've seen them before I left Facebook a couple of years ago. I've seen them, and it is a horrific place to be. 100%. Well, if you're new to the podcast, Derek, and you're new to the show, thanks for coming and stopping by. We do appreciate you. It is a Saturday, so we appreciate you spending your time with us. But one thing we like to do is we like to get a little bit of knowledge from Tom Lee and where he is on the other side of the world, because we're not kidding. Tom Lee is in Aussie land. This is where he resides. This is where he's from. We're international here. And he ain't no fucking wombat, I'll tell you that much. We like to get a little bit of information from Tom Lee, from where he's from. So what's our Aussie slang today?
So I couldn't decide between a couple of them. But I like that we ended on Juju because this little Aussie slang sort of embodies Juju's atmosphere and what he's going on about. So today's slang is carrying on like a pork chop.
Oh, I'm using it. Explain it.
So it just means that someone's acting silly or crazy. So, mate, stop carrying on like a fucking pork chop. No idea where it came from. Pork chop, obviously common cut of meat. No idea why that's the silliness. But yeah, it's in the Aussie vernacular. It's used a lot. Parents calling kids, "Oh, he was carrying on like a pork chop." You know, people doing silly things in bars. Of course, Aussie people drinking far too much all of the time. So yeah. Pork chop, use it, take it, carrying on like a pork chop.
Carrying on like a pork chop. Oh, I'm using it just like I use wombat all week at work.
Wombat's good. I like wombat.
I love that. I absolutely love it. Tom Lee, we appreciate you, man. We can't wait to get your rookie ranks all in order.
Excited for that.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for that. But of course, again, like I said, we have Josh Larkey on Tuesday, the 22nd. That'll be 9 Eastern, 8 Central. Because I figured that out now with daylight savings times and whatnot. And as for me, look, I put out an article on why Hollywood Brown is the Ravens' value that you need to be targeting right now. Go and do it. You can read that at fantasyintervention.com. As I announced on Twitter today, I am joining goingfor2.com as a content creator there. I have an article about Trey Lance being the 22 breakout star and why you definitely need to be in on that. No questions asked, Jimmy G or not. That'll be coming out, I hope, soon. Might be, starting to do a little potting with goingfor2.com. So look forward to that. Like I said, Tuesday, we have Josh Larkey of Player Profiler and of TikTok. He's been lighting it up there as well. He's going to come and talk Player Profiler and living by the bar graph. Which is what I like to call it. Of course, we had great guests: Austin Gayle of Pro Football Focus, Ben Gretch of Yards Per Gretch. We had Pat Daugherty of NBC Sports Edge. It's just been an absolutely fantastic couple of weeks here at the show, and I couldn't have done it without all my mates. And of course, I just want to mention, as we're kicking off in 2 weeks, right, for the rookie countdown, we're not counting up this year. We figured it out. We're counting down from 20 to number 1. If you guess the consensus, that's 6 of us, me, Tom Lee, Jacob, Billy, Lucas, Maddie. If you can guess our consensus top 3 running backs correctly before we get to the 5th, it's basically the 4th show, right before the draft. You comment, you go to at Dynasty Tilt, you leave a comment, you come to our live show, you leave a comment. We are going to take note, and whoever guesses it right, and if there's a tie, we're going to go who guesses it right first, will win a signed Penn State Saquon Barkley jersey. And we don't care where you live. It could be the UK, it could be the US, it could be Canada, it could be Ireland, prison, whatever. We will pay for it and we will send it to you. Obviously, we joke. But we will pay for it. We will send it to you. We will get it shipped out because we appreciate you. And that's what we do. That's just one giveaway that we're doing this year. There's going to be many, many more. One thing I always like to do when I talk about the show is I always like to end it the same way. Be kind to one another. Be a good person. Like I said, please go and read Jacob Sanderson's FF_RTDB, his article on Deshawn Watson. It is important when dealing with vernacular and the situations and victims and all that other fun stuff, not so fun stuff that's happening on Twitter right now. It's important to know the language and what's happening, but go and read it. It's definitely worthwhile. It's one of the best pieces I've read in a very long time. The guy's a genius. It really drives me nuts. Obviously, check in on your loved ones because you never know when they're going to need them. I want you to remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose, and that your best days, well, they're always they're best spent here tilting. Good night, everybody. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Stay safe. We'll see you on Tuesday. Later.